Welcome back. I'm Rahat Beri, and today we are diving straight into India's growth story, family legacies, business challenges, and what the next decade could look like. Joining me in is someone who has seen Indian businesses from every angle. Ketan Dalal, welcome.
Thank you.
He's a veteran advisor, entrepreneur, and wears various hats. He's seen global giants and Indian businesses, and he's helped them navigate through complexities, risks, and growth. Welcome, Ketan.
Thank you. Thank you, Ram.
Ketan, let's start by, let's play it big. Headlines everywhere which says that India is the next growth engine of the world. Is it just hype, or are we actually at the inflection point?
So I think Rahat, India is in a good place. There's no doubt about it. There are a large number of tailwinds that India has. Of course, we've talked about demographics. I think we've also talked about there's been a lot of talk about the talent that India has. So, for example, in the recent H-1B issue, you've seen the reaction of the tech leaders in the US, such
True.
as Sundar Pichai, for example. So we have not only the demographics, but also the talent. The other thing is that India has made some significant strides on the digital part.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the way share transactions happen today as compared to 20 years ago, or mutual funds can be bought, for example, at the click of a button.
True.
Bank transactions can happen in a jiffy. Some of it, by the way, the last part does not even happen in a country like USA as easily as
Interesting.
it does in
Okay.
India. So I think we have made a tremendous amount of progress on the digital stack.
Okay.
Uh, Also, I think although relatively late, there has been a realization on the part of the government that government policy is very important.
True.
And the last but not the least is I think we have a whole bunch of entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurial spirit in India is very significant,
True.
including in mid-sized companies, etc. So these are the significant tailwinds, but of course there are some headwinds, some which are internal to India, and some which are that we are in the midst of probably the most volatile geopolitical situation that I have seen in the 45 years that I have been
Why
in
do
my
you say
working
that?
life. I mean, can you imagine a situation where, let's look at the Ukraine war. When it started in 2022, and it just doesn't seem that it's 3.5 years, but remember, Rad, it is 3.5
Yeah,
years.
true.
Honestly, I know of very eminent commentators who said that this will probably last 10 days. We are now 3.5
Half
years
years and still not over.
and still not over. So you have a very long drawn war, but it is not just Russia, Ukraine, it has divided the world.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at US and NATO, US and Europe,
There's each one who's taking sides,
absolutely,
and
you,
yeah.
you have China playing some role somewhere, etc. Then you have, of course, the situation in the Middle East, Israel, and Gaza.
Yeah.
You have that bombing that happened even in
So the overall the global tensions tend
yes.
to affect, I think, the market economics too.
No,
We've
not
seen
yes, not
that.
only that, and then where you have 20% of the world's GDP, you have a extremely volatile, unpredictable, and very, very unusual, if I might put it that way, US administration, which is completely upending the world.
True.
And you see, the problem is that the implications of this and the unwinding of this, and it will happen at some point, will probably take years, because you have something set in an administration. You have people who have been put in that place, and to unwind that situation is going to take years. So you
True.
have upended the world relationships. That's what I meant when I said that you are in the middle of probably the most volatile global or geopolitical stroke economic situation. And also remember, Rahat, that China is 18% of the world's GDP. So between these two, this 40% of the world's GDP.
True.
The relations between the two are not good. And you cannot have the rest of the world immune to that reality.
And you can't be taking sides. I think what the US economy is putting us through is to take sides. And I don't think one can. While we need the US for the kind of businesses that we, whether it's technology and a lot of businesses, let's be honest,
Yeah.
we need them. But I think being threatened to take sides becomes a very, very difficult situation.
And India is, you're right, Rahat, and India is walking the very difficult tightrope between taking sides and not taking sides.
True.
And for example, quote unquote, India is not taking Russia's side, but it is saying that it is in the interest of my economy, as
True.
Jaishankar has often pointed out, that I will need to buy oil because I can't ignore the fact that if it is $3 lesser and I am importing 85% of my oil, it will make a dent in my fiscal position if I
course
don't
it
do
will.
it.
Of
But I'm
course it
not
will.
taking its side, but it's a very, very difficult narrative. And India is, and see the implication of not taking side but impliedly doing whatever you're doing is causing a lot of issues. But I don't think that we have a choice, and I think under the circumstances we are navigating it well.
Okay, going back to the factor, how easy is it to do business? Because a lot of people currently have challenges in doing business. Do you think the kind of policies, the kind of scenario that we have in India currently, does it make it easy for people to do business and grow the businesses?
This is honestly something close to my heart, but I don't like the answer to this myself. So let me put it this way. Is it easier to do business now than it was 10 years ago? Yes. But if I were to be a little controversial, I can say that anything can be made to look good if you compare it with a sufficiently bad alternative. Maybe it's not as bad as that.
True.
I think to be honest, a lot of good changes have been made. I mean, you have a GST, you have a GST 2, and we can, if you wish, talk about that a bit more later. You also have, as I said, digital. You can form a company within 5 days. A lot of digital things. Income tax returns can be filed online, etc., etc. But also along with that, there are 3 or 4 issues. One is, I think we are being bombarded with an avalanche of compliance requirements.
True.
So, for example, and this is only partly in jest, when I file my income tax return, Rahat, I find out things about myself. I mean, the level of detail, is it really required? Are you really going to go through it? I don't think so. A company, a listed company, is subject to what is called LODR requirements. It means listing obligations and disclosure requirements.
Okay.
The amount of disclosure, the purpose of the disclosure is to enable shareholders to have meaningful information. But when you have such an overload of information, I don't think shareholders will really find it easier to take decisions. I think you're going
True.
overboard.
True.
The third is the bureaucracy. Anything which requires an approval takes forever. Has it improved? Yes. Can it improve much more? Most certainly,
course.
yes. And the fourth, and this is one of the most painful ones, we have a judiciary, but the process is the punishment. I'm involved in a few litigations where large families are involved, and my client keeps telling me I'm right. I said, I know you're right. It will take you forever to establish that you're right.
True.
So this is becoming a problem. So the process of judiciary is very, very, very tortuous. So I think, so to your question, is it easy to do business? There have been a lot of
everything
enablers.
has a lopsided.
So there are a lot of enablers, Rahat, but there are a lot of things that need to get fixed. And I think bureaucracy, information overload, stroke compliance, and judiciary are 3 of the top.
Okay. Okay. We spoke on GST 2.0. While it looks interesting now than what it was earlier, was it required?
Oh, yes. You must remember that GST 2 is not just a change of processes. There has been a very significant cut in GST rates. So we had, for example, 12, 18, 28. Now majority has moved into the 18 and 5 rates. In fact, 90% of what was there in 28, 90% has either moved into 18, more into 18 than 5, and 99% or 98% of what was in 18 has moved into 5.
Okay.
So we are seeing it is not just some process changes. This is significant reduction. Of course, for companies to pass on the full benefit is going to be a challenge, and the government is monitoring it. So television sets, for example. So in fact, a whole host of home appliances, television sets, microwaves, air conditioners.
But why was the earlier tab unjustified? Why did they
It
have?
was, see, honestly, it was quite high.
Yeah.
Okay, and what happens is when a business buys, let's say, air conditioners, it gets a set off. But when you and I, who may not be running a business, or there may be a company, but we may be doing it for our personal use, we can't get a set off. So there is a direct cost on us.
Okay.
So if I buy a personal car, I'm paying the full GST and I'm not getting any set off. And if I'm paying that at 28 and 40% and all that, it is very, very high.
Okay.
Now there is a 93,000 crore revenue loss estimated for the government, but some items from 28 are moved from 28 to 40, what they call sin goods, private aircrafts, tobacco, blah, blah. So that is expected to fetch 45,000 crores, with the net impact being 48,000 crores of loss. Now, if you see oil prices, which have reduced so much, of course, unfortunately, the dollar has appreciated.
Yeah.
But the oil prices, which were at $120, $100, 90, 80, have been relatively steady at $66, $67. And that's a massive benefit to India.
Okay.
And in spite of that, petrol prices are not going up. So government has some buffer. The government has a buffer. So this loss, hopefully it can absorb. And also, I think it will boost economic activity. And the boost in economic activity will generate a higher base. So it's like saying, if I was charging 18 on X base, and if I'm charging 12 or 5 on X plus 30 base, hopefully a part of that will be made up. So I think it's a very significant initiative.
Okay, now let's get to the more interesting subject about succession planning. Why are so many Indian families getting it wrong?
Well, so there are 2 or 3 reasons for that. Traditionally, we Indians have not been structured. So, without meaning to sound flippant, let's say friends meet.
Sure.
And they'll say, let's meet next week. But nobody will say, let's meet next Saturday.
We're
At
not
so and so
specific.
time.
We're not specific.
You see, that culture, unfortunately, Rahat, has permeated into business families. It's changing a lot now, and I'll come to that in a moment. So, shareholding structures. So, something will be in an HUF, something will be in a company. The brother is holding something, the bhabhi is holding something, the son is holding something. And it sometimes gets difficult to figure out. Now, you don't even have clarity of ownership. I know of a family where there are 3 brothers, sort of. They themselves, by the way, are they are more or less the first gen, okay. The second gen, there are some 7 second gen. One of the second gen sons, who's 28 years old, asked me, he said, what do I actually own? I could not answer that question because his holding is in such parts.
So there's no clarity.
There's no clarity.
Absolutely.
So what is happening is there is very often no clarity of ownership. Ownerships are too complex. Many of these were legacy reasons, created something for tax, something for
Yeah,
something
I was
else.
just going to say a lot of companies were just created for the sake of taxation.
Yeah, some is taxation, some is for many other reasons. But the point is lack of that. Also lack of management clarity. You have somebody who's the second gen out of, let's say, college or maybe even London Business School. He comes, he joins, doesn't have a clear role. So lot of those lack of clarity, and that all leads to disputes and succession planning. But things are changing significantly. And we can talk about that if you
Any
want.
interesting one which you handled, which you feel?
I can't give names, but
Sure.
I can tell you the context. So, for example, in one family, it's a very sophisticated family. The market cap is the main company is the listed companies, roughly 35,000 crores in market cap. Very sophisticated brothers. So they already have a shareholders agreement, which was done about 10, 12 years back. And I was very happy that there was a shareholders agreement. We now are updating that shareholders agreement because 2 of the 4 children between the 2 brothers are married. So we need to clean up all that. So they are updating that shareholders agreement. I told them that when you update that shareholders agreement, it will need to be disclosed to the stock exchange under LODR requirements.
Definitely.
They're okay with that. So, there is that transparency because they are saying, look, we have nothing to hide. We don't have to disclose the agreement. We have to disclose the material terms. We are okay to do that.
I think they're also safeguarding the compliance stuff, right? Because
Not only compliance, Rahat, what happens is that if you and I are shareholders of such a company and we have such clarity in which the two brothers who are the main promoters are operating, I suppose it should give us comfort that the company in which we have invested is unlikely to run into a succession planning imbroglio. So I think these kind of things. So for example, shareholders agreements are happening. They are less, but they are happening.
okay.
Family charters are happening. Structures are getting cleaned up. I'm not saying it's across the board, but I have been amazed in the last 5 years. I think the trend has also accelerated post COVID. And I think one of the reasons is that people have realized the reality of mortality.
Okay.
They've
True.
realized.
True.
So earlier I have a situation where a 78-year-old man, I kept on telling him that, look, you have 18% of a listed company and your two sons want you to make a will. They are not saying you disclose what is there, but at least make one. A 78-year-old man is telling me I'll do it in 2-3 years.
You've created a dispute.
Luckily he's still alive and he made his will last year. And it was a nightmare to convince him to make his will because
But
he
I
couldn't
think
decide.
one should make a will at as early as possible.
Oh,
I think it
absolutely. And
helps clarity, it helps avoid complexities, family disputes, etc. Just take into consideration the current case, which is in the news, is the Sanjay Kapur's 30,000 crore empire, and there's chaos. I think it's a fodder for news. But where do you think the Kapurs went wrong?
See, I don't know enough about the facts to comment meaningfully. So it would not be appropriate for me to comment. But I suppose, again, the fact is that there seems to have been some lack of clarity on ownership, etc. And of course, in many of these cases, there are softer issues on relationships. But on the specifics of that case, really, I don't have the factual aspects to comment. And of course, remember that it's also sub judice and it is
Sure. Yeah.
is getting
one
fought
can't.
out, sort of. So it would not be. But as a broader level, rather than as I was mentioning, the lack of clarity of ownership, proper wills, which cannot be disputed, etc., etc. Holding structures,
Yeah,
clarity on
that
holding
the will
structures.
was made a few months before he
Yes,
passed. So I
yes.
think that also gave in a lot of suspicions. If you had a chance to whisper into the PM's ear, what would you say are the 3 policy priorities for India?
I hope I have that chance. I don't think I will get the chance. But on a serious note, as I mentioned, see, again, it's a fallout of what I said earlier. I think we really badly need the attitude of the bureaucracy to become an enabling thing.
Okay.
I'm not saying there is no change. There is a change. There is a positive change. But that what I would call the regulatory suspicion that every businessman seems to be doing something wrong, unfortunately still pervades the bureaucracy.
Okay.
That is leading to what I would call regulatory cholesterol. What is happening is too many laws, too many disclosures. I think it is regulatory cholesterol.
It's also confusing, right?
It's confusing, lot of compliance, approvals and more approvals and time frame. Look at NCLT. NCLT is dealing with 2 categories of cases. There are 3 or 4, but 2 main. One is the IBC cases, and the second is schemes of arrangement of companies. Now, in the schemes of arrangement, the NCLT really has only a limited role because if the shareholders and the creditors have approved, they have primarily a role to sort of, unless there is something very dramatically wrong, or let's say a swap ratio in a merger where something is adverse to a minority shareholders. Other than that, their role should be sort of oversight and facilitation. That's not the way it works.
True.
They tend to get into issues which really they shouldn't be getting into. And the process is long and tortuous. Things which should take 2 months and 3 months are taking 6 months, 9 months, 1 year. And I know of restructuring which have been derailed. So I think this one is the regulatory cholesterol part and the bureaucratic approach. Now you can't legislate an approach.
Okay.
So that's a mindset change. The second, the NCLT example, and what I had earlier said about the delays in judiciary and the process being the punishment is a subset of judicial reform.
Okay.
So that is the second thing. And the third, of course, is I think a tremendous number of things have been done on infrastructure. I mean, you look at Bombay, coastal road, metro, Atal Setu, then missing link which will come up, then things in
Yeah.
the north and Atal Tunnel. I mean, lot of things have been done. But also we must remember that we were very late in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that needs to speed up because I think infrastructure will be a significant enabler to. So first of
For
all,
the growth, of
so
course.
in creating the infrastructure, you're creating so many
Sure.
jobs because
Sure.
infrastructure can't be created overnight.
Absolutely.
Sorry, and that itself will generate a lot of jobs. So I think these are the three or four things. If I were to get the chance to whisper,
Interesting. Okay. I think earlier we did speak a little bit about when we were talking about companies and businesses. I think there's one aspect where we missed out is governance. What are your thoughts on the quality of governance that we see in a lot of companies, and why is it so essential for people to have good governance in their businesses?
you know, first of all, I think that there has been a misconception that the quality of governance in Indian companies is bad. I think the improvement has been significant.
Okay.
Uh, and the reason is the magic of market cap. And of course, I'm talking more of the listed companies, but remember, they constitute a very major part of of the economy.
Sure.
I think also in unlisted companies it is improving. But let me just sort of, first of all, what is the importance? Obviously, the fact that when companies are larger, there are other stakeholders. So there are lenders in listed companies, and sometimes in unlisted companies, there are external shareholders. So they are also big stakeholders. There are employees whose lives and families are dependent upon that employment. So you have, and as the size of companies and businesses goes larger, the implications of stakeholders rather, the implications of stakeholders having to be comforted that there is good governance goes even greater.
True.
As I said, the magic of market cap is a major, very major, because a well-governed company.
Company.
If you look at the past, Infosys is a classic example. Its market multiples was higher than most others. Why? Because the governance was impeccable. It is
Yeah.
impeccable actually.
But I think one case that they went through, it did impact them, right?
Of course, I think it was a blip.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think it was not a cancer. It was a blip.
But I
It
think it's
was a
sort of the
roadblock.
realization. I think
Yeah,
it
so
also
you will have those kind of things, but by and large, the governance,
governance is
and you have a whole host of, you look at some of the private sector banks, ADFC, ICICI. It's gone through. One of them went through that governance issue, but overall, in the last few years, a lot of things have,
changed and
improved.
improved.
Things will need to improve even more. But I think overall, and also remember one thing, and if you look at listed companies, NSE has about 4,000 companies listed,
Okay.
maybe a little less. NSE and BSE certainly. The NSE 500, which is one-eighth the number, constitutes 92% of the market cap. So
Okay.
we need to distinguish, and I think majority of those companies, I cannot of course be sure of all, but I would hazard a guess to stick my neck out and say that 85 to 90% of these companies are extremely well governed.
Okay.
So which means that 92% in value,
Okay.
it may be one-eighth in number.
Okay. But the perception is that
Yeah.
it's larger.
No, so what I'm trying to say, I'm not saying the remaining are not well governed, but not all of them will be. And sometimes you make a law for those outliers, and that is the core of the problem of ease of doing business, because you are making outlier regulations for the outlier situation, then you have outlier administration of those outlier legislations.
Okay.
This is the problem.
So if for a few, you have a whole lot suffering through all
It's
the
like
elements.
saying that if somebody has gone past a red signal, there is no need to put two policemen at 2 a.m. in the morning, but that's what you're doing. This is the problem.
What do you feel is the impact of AI in the legal and chartered accountancy community?
That's a much narrower question, Rahat. I was stunned to read from some latest research report, which was really an excellent one. This year, US companies, mainly US companies, US and Chinese companies put together mainly, are going to spend $440 billion on AI. And by 2028, if I remember rightly, it's be 3 trillion, which is, by the way, equal to India's GDP, will be
Yeah,
spent on
I was just
only
going to
AI.
say that. Yeah.
Well, India's GDP is 4, but yeah. I think AI is going to disrupt the world. So it is not only chartered accountants and legal practitioners, but I am on 4 listed boards, and there is now a lot of conversation on AI. But if you ask me about, let's say, the professional community, say lawyers and chartered accountants, etc., this is becoming a critical narrative. And anything which is repetitive jobs, there is going to be a significant impact on that, and therefore only those who upskill themselves and can do value added are going to survive this wave.
True.
That is also going to impact, say, BPOs, GCCs. So it's not just this community. I think it's going to have a seismic disruptive wave. There's going to be a tidal wave of changes. And I think many people will lose jobs, but many new jobs will be created. The problem is going to be to match the skills of, so for example, very interestingly, and I know you asked about legal and chartered accountants, but let me give you an example of healthcare. You are now going to have in AI that you can talk to a nurse who's actually not a real person
Yeah.
through AI.
Yeah.
Now, you may not be comfortable. So, but 30 or 40 or 50% will happen. Now, what is the nurse going to do then? What are these nurses going to do? So, there is going to be a lot of upheaval and reskilling, but I think it is going to.
But you have a lot of legal tech companies and AI companies coming up to facilitate a lot of stuff. While I agree with you that people need to upgrade and upskill on that, but I think it also enables a lot of learning. Where you would spend a lot of time. I think chartered accountancies and all of them are using a lot of AI tools, and I think it's quite an enabler.
Without doubt. And I think it's just fantastic. I mean, look at what is now considered, so to speak, the lower end of AI, which is, say, ChatGPT, for
Yeah.
example, or DeepSeek. I mean, the kind of answers I can find in 10 minutes on that would have taken me 3 hours to research.
True.
So, yes, I think it will make a very big difference. It will upgrade the overall quality, etc. But there's also going to be a lot of upheaval in jobs. And I think people need to realize that they will need to upskill, to reorient themselves.
True.
But overall, if you ask me, it's like manufacturing. When manufacturing became so important, as opposed to a horse-driven carriage gave way to a car. I mean,
True.
nobody says that we lost so many jobs forever, right? People sort of.
It's a growth,
adapted.
right? You need to grow. I think you're saying you're a growing economy. These are all aspects of growth, Ketan. You need to move in that direction. Yeah, you're right. You need to upskill, you need to upgrade yourself, and there could be new opportunities.
Absolutely, there will be.
There will be.
The thing is that this is not just growth; this is seismic changes. But
True.
yes, I think overall it will be great, but it will have its own challenges for sure. To your point about chartered accountants, or for that matter, lawyers who have to now live in the AI world, I think the key issue is they have to realize that anything which is regular, the regular research, if it can be done by AI, they therefore need to become very much aware that they need to move up the value chain in terms of more customized advice. So, for example, specialization in, say, cybercrime, for example,
Okay.
specialization in risk management, for example, as opposed to quote unquote regular stuff. I think is applicable, Rahat, across the board.
Okay.
But since you asked about chartered accountants, lawyers, etc., I thought
Sure.
it would
Okay,
apply in this way.
I think there's one more thing which I'd like to know is about young entrepreneurs. There is a growing entrepreneur community which is thing. So any direction, any advisory from your perspective in terms of when they're looking at growing their businesses, etc., any do's and don'ts?
Yeah, so I think two, I would like to say, one is the world is changing at a very rapid pace. So their ability to see the future and recognize that things, they need to understand and plan for things that will be and not with things they are, because they're building a business for the future.
True. Yeah.
Number one. Number two, get the governance right. And there are various reasons for that. We talked about market cap. And these may not be listed companies. So they may not think in that sense about the market cap today. But say, for example, to attract investors, their governance needs to be great. But there's one more point. The complexity of modern business today is so high that you need very good people to run it.
True.
And if the quality of your governance is not right, and that would be my advice, you will not be able to attract the right people. If you are not able to attract the right people, then pray, how are you going to grow?
That's
So
true.
I think these are the two pieces of advice I would like to give.
Traditional companies, okay, family run traditional companies, now they're it's now, it goes on, the mantle moves on to the new generation. So any views on the way they should look at things from a policy point of view and the way they're functioning, not just governance but overall from a business perspective?
Yeah, so when the next gen comes in, so let's look at a company which is run in a traditional manner, and many of the children of those promoters are IIM, ISB, London Business School, Harvard, and Wharton. When they come back, they come with a very structured, sort of Western organized mindset. And therefore, they want to bring in those changes fast. They, of course, need to remember that things in a traditional run company will take time to change, but equally, their the first gen, so to speak, a parent who has started a business needs to also recognize that changes will come. It will be in two parts. One is the business hopefully will get more organized, and that's a good thing for the business. Better people will be attracted, which is also a good thing for the business. But the tricky sensitive thing is the issue of loosening control and passing the mantle. The
Okay.
last part
Yeah,
is
the let
probably
go.
one of the let go. Of course, the next gen then has to be capable and cannot be in a hurry. But that equation in practice, Rahat, is what I am seeing is one of the most trickiest ones.
Okay. I want to talk about the corporate boardroom battles. We've seen a number of them happen in the last couple of years. Do you see that tends to affect the business part of it when you see so many battles within the
So
large corporates?
let me step back. First of all, the number of battles compared to the number of companies, not that many.
Okay. But these
I
are
think,
large. You're talking about
yeah, no, no. So
large
wherever it
corporates.
does happen, uh, to some extent, see, one is a battle in the boardroom, and second is a shareholder battle outside the boardroom.
Okay.
Both will impact. The first will impact more, the second will impact less.
Okay.
But I think possibly the only answer to that is the ability to address that issue either through a mediation or an arbitration, and I don't think through courts, because I
Because then it
think,
goes
yeah,
very
because I
long.
said
It
no, the
becomes,
process is the punishment.
yeah, that's
So
true.
there will be a
And
value
there's no
destruction.
faster judiciary.
No. Whereas mediation, for example, is a good thing to do. And people then have to understand that there will be a give and take, but it's important to close the issue because it is critical for preventing value destruction or at least mitigating value destruction, and definitely for relationships. And I
True.
think the latter part, softer, I think is also critical.
Okay. Independent directors. A lot of companies have got independent directors on board. And I think a lot of them of late have had the fear of looking at a company, from a full compliance, because the responsibility that an independent director takes on board is huge. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not that a lot of companies have independent directors, listed companies and certain unlisted companies need to have as per the
Independent
Companies
director.
Act. So you had to have independent directors. So I think here again, as and it's a subset, Rahat, of this whole governance issue. I think the quality of independent directors, the quality of their interaction has improved substantially, partly because of what you said, that there is a lot of responsibility and there are penal consequences of
Yeah,
that.
which is because you're directly responsible.
But sometimes the law has gone the other way because the law has to realize, and to some extent it has, that independent directors are not running the company on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, there have been cases on check bouncing versus independent director. I mean, you can't hold the independent director
Directors
responsible
on.
for that. But as a broader level, I think the responsibilities on independent directors increase, and at least I would say in the top 500,000 companies, which again, as I said, represents substantial part of market cap, the quality of independent directors also gone up.
Okay.
But having said that, independent directors will also have to understand two or three things. One is they need to understand the business very well, which means they need to spend time on that understanding. Second, if the business is a regulated one, banks, insurance companies, NBFCs, even pharma, they need to be more careful. And number three, the amount of reading that they have to do on an ongoing basis, both on the sector, on the company, and generally. So for related party transactions, for example.
Okay.
Now, I may understand it, but let's say an engineer on the board may not understand. But even he will have to go
So
through
be
some of
better
those things.
equipped
Absolutely.
with knowledge.
I think
Okay.
so.
On the women, boards, having women on boards. I think there was a government to build in a lot of women empowerment. You had a rule where you said that you have to have a certain number of ratio of the women.
One woman
One
director.
woman. But I don't see, what I have seen is a lot of companies are getting their family members onto it. So where does professionalism
So I'll
lie
tell
there?
you, in the case of woman director, it does not say woman independent director.
Okay.
So to your point that they have family, I don't have the number offhand, but let's see, if I were to look at the top 500 companies, I suspect not more than 25, 30, 40 will have family, and let's say 450, 60, 70
Okay.
will have an independent person. The problem is that companies want independent women directors with experience, and sometimes there are very competent women who may not have that experience. There has to be a first time, but as we are seeing a burst of IPOs, right?
True.
So as this gets broad based, I think you will have more and more women. And my personal experience has been that having a woman director on the board is extremely valuable for a company.
True.
I have seen a completely different perspective in many cases.
It always
Absolutely.
does.
I
I think
think
from
it's
a
a- I think
social
it's a great move.
perspective, from a different elements, I think a woman director can bring in on a different experience.
Oh,
levels.
absolutely. There's no question. There's no question.
You've advised quite a few of the India's largest family businesses. Where do you see your own journey go through? You were with PwC. You started off Katalyst Advisors. Where do you see your journey grow?
Well, I enjoy the work that I do because at 68, otherwise I wouldn't be working. I think the ability to make a difference is driving me. So as long as I feel that way, I will continue. I think what we are doing, our firm is doing, and what I'm personally doing is majority of the work that we do is for families. It will not be only family matters, of course. It'll be for promoter driven companies, listed or otherwise.
True.
And the reason is that because that's where I think our firm can add the maximum value. I can add the maximum value because it also requires not just technical knowledge, Rahat. It requires social skills and commercial understanding in addition to technical skills.
Okay.
And I think to deal with family businesses, the social skills
Are very important.
are also very important. And I think that's where,
Because it requires a little bit of patience, it requires a little bit of understanding, and the way you deal with it. It's like
and the emotional connect. No?
emotional connect. It's very, very important.
Absolutely.
That's where social skills play a very, very large. So, in the midst of doing all this, I know you're a workaholic. How do you maintain your work-life balance?
Well, I do have in my earlier career, it was unfortunately a 14-15 hour day. It is no longer that, but it's still an 11-hour day, 10 to 11-hour day. But I mean, obviously, a fitness regime. I like to play golf once a week, and I do tend to make it 3 times a month. I think at least for the last few years. And I read a lot. Once in a month or so, there'll be some play, some music program. So I think it is quite a bit of balance, I would think.
Okay. So, you manage that.
I think so.
What we're going to do is quick takes on a one-liner, which I'd like you to give in. India's biggest business risk today.
Bureaucracy, I would say.
Family business or professional management?
Both, depending on what the situation is, both have their place.
One reform India desperately needs.
I would say 2, bureaucratic reform and judicial reform.
What about skills, education?
Yes, so that is less of a reform and more of an enabler. But I
Okay.
would say absolutely, that I missed that actually. I think skilling is going to become extremely important.
True.
So it's not just education, it's also skilling.
Yeah,
Which
because
I think
the
China
National
has done.
Skill Development Board is working
vocational
very,
skills,
yeah,
yes.
it's
where I
doing-
think, by the way, China has done a great job.
Okay. SMEs in India, underdogs or overlooked?
overlooked for sure. But I think now getting more into the, at least if not SMEs, at least the MSME sector is getting significant focus.
Okay. Politics and business, friend or foe?
Well, in some cases they have to be friends, but in some cases it is not. In some of the industries where government is not that much involved, say FMCG for example,
Okay.
they don't need to be linked at all. But some where it is, let's say government contracts, resources, etc. Unfortunately, they will need to be friends, and certainly not foes.
True. That's so true. Okay. You've given us a perspective. You've been quite honest. And I think you've given us a lot of guidance and wisdom. And also understanding from a business point of view and from on policies what is that's needed for India's growth story. So thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Rahat.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If you like the content we're producing, please do like, subscribe, and share. We're on Missed Conversations with Rahat Beri. Thank you.